Supporting a call by the Workers' Federation, the Congress of South African Trade Unions, Cosatu, for a nationwide multi-sector strike.
Among other reasons, the workers marched for decent jobs, an end to retrenchments, and the scrapping of the controversial e-tolls on World Day for Decent Work. Joining us live in studio now is Cosatu Spokesperson Sizwe Pamla. Thanks for joining us, Sizwe.
Thank you.
Sizwe, now to get straight into it, do you think the call has received the necessary support from workers, because they are the reason why this happened anyway?
Well, as a federation, we are just happy that for the first time we are talking about worker issues. For the last 4 years, Cosatu has been self-flagellating, where the only headline you will see of Cosatu was about internal squabbles. So now we are very happy that we are back at work, we are leading worker struggles, we are on the streets, and that's the mandate that we got from the Special National Congress, to unite the workers and lead them in their struggles.
Now, Mr. Pamla, is Cosatu against foreign ownership with regards to the banking sector? Is this not discouraging investment?
Well, look, this issue of discouraging investment is a myth that people like to encourage. Actually, it's not true. This country had investors when it was isolated during the apartheid years. So these investors, Anglo-American, all the mining companies, all of these banks have been here since apartheid days. So it's a myth that people use to intimidate us and intimidate workers so that we can succumb to their tactics. No, we are clear. What we want is that those investors who are coming into South Africa, they are going to come in here, they are going to invest. We don't expect them to take all of their profits out of the country. That's economic sabotage.
Now, some of the issues that you discussed is affordable workers' transport, and then the issue of e-tolls obviously comes into play. Are e-tolls here to stay? Because the fight has been going on for quite a long time now.
Well, that's why we call ours a struggle, because it's not easy. When we started this battle against e-tolls, we never expected it will be an overnight victory. Everything that we do as workers, everything that we do as a federation, is that we push back. The e-tolls, if you look at the number of cars in Gauteng and the number of people with e-tax, you will realize that the federation has managed to galvanize and mobilize society against the e-tolls. No, we are going to resist the e-tolls up until they tear down those countries. And we will chase them all across the country, wherever they appear in any of our cities. We will be there as Cosatu to stop them. What
if this doesn't happen? If you say tear down those gantries, what if that does not happen?
We never look at struggles that we wage and have a sense of defeat. We're not defeatists in that way. We know that those e-tolls are going to go at some point, because firstly, it's unsustainable. The African National Congress itself has reflected on the e-tolls. They've realized that it was a miscalculation, it was a blunder from the word go. The fact that they are there, it doesn't necessarily mean that they can't be taken away. All of us as stakeholders, at some point, we just have to sit down and agree that these e-tolls have to go. As to how do we then make sure that we recoup some of the money that was spent, well, that's a debate for another day. But from where we are standing, we don't want them revised, we don't want them fixed in any other way, we want them gone.
Sizwe, let's shift focus now and look at higher taxes for the wealthy. We had economist Thomas Piketty advocating this when he was in the country just a few days ago, actually. Now, what forms of tax and how without alienating the wealthy from the economy? How do you think it should go about, you as Cosatu?
Well, as Cosatu, firstly, our starting place is that we shouldn't treat the wealthy people as if they are these untouchables. Workers are the people who actually do the breaking work. For example, we have a strike of coal miners there. When you look at the amount of money that has been made by the Exxaro, for example, and Anglo Coal and all of those companies, in fact, the economy made more than 36 billion on coal last year. And yet those workers earn hardly 5,000 rand a month. So we find that totally unacceptable. We want those companies to come into the country, as long as, if they are prepared to invest and create new jobs, then they have to be accommodated. But they have to be taxed, because this whole concept that companies are going to run away if we tax them. No, our position is that they have to be taxed. And if they are uncomfortable with that, they should go to any other country where they think they can get the very same kind of resources that are in this country and where they will not be taxed.
Just to pick up on that, let's get a little controversial and look beyond companies. What about individuals who are South Africans who form part of that 1% of the wealthiest? What happens with them?
Well, we expect that everybody, there's something we call a comprador bourgeoisie. We expect people to actually be more nationalistic. We expect people to have a developmental consciousness when they are here. All of us, we have to pay tax. But if I am earning 1,000 rand, I can't be expected to pay the same amount of tax with someone who's earning 1,000,000 rand. So all of us, we have to put in, because there is something called society. This is not about individualism. For example, we are the big proponents of national health insurance. It is about universal health care. We want to ensure that those who are employed and unemployed will be able to access health from the point of service. So all of us, we have to chip in. And our position as the Federation is that we are not necessarily saying we should target the rich. We are not anti-success, we're not anti-wealth. What we just don't want to see happen is a situation where these individuals think that they can take all of the resources, because, by the way, most of these people make wealth out of the resources that we all share as a society. The land that is out there. When you talk about 60,000 commercial farmers who feed us, then let's go back to the issue of land reform then, to say, let's get a piece of land ourselves so that we can take care of ourselves. But if you are going to own 5 farms, then you have to be ready to pay your fair share of tax.
Now, speaking on that, the issue of land reform, it has been an issue on the table for a very long time, and government has been trying to deal with that. What should government do differently? Also looking at the fact that Cosatu and other unions have been calling for this to be changed and to be reformed. What needs to be done differently to ensure that it does happen going forward?
We do have policies in place. The government of South Africa just need to get courage to deal with this issue. It is long overdue. We have to expropriate. This land was not necessarily discovered, as they like to allege, those who have possession of land, who are in possession of land. They stole it. And the fact that we have actually said they need to be compensated, we are being overgenerous. We should be taking back the land. So the issue of land is here to stay with us. If we don't resolve it as this generation, the next generation will still come and reopen this debate. So what we are calling for is that let us roll out the process of expropriation. What we are not going to tolerate is a situation where the fiscus is going to be bankrupted by people who want to be paid for something that they stole. All individuals who know that they inherited this piece of land, and yet their forefathers killed our forefathers to get this piece of land. Now we want the land back. It's as simple as that. Government just needs to develop courage to be able to implement these policies. There's no country in the world that has got a minority in possession of all of the arable land and land with minerals like we do in South Africa. Most of the countries, it's the majority that is in possession of land. It's the minority that is looking for land.
Now, let's look at retrenchments. I mean, the mining sector has been dealing with a lot of this. There's a task team that's trying to make sure that job cuts aren't that heavy. Does the Federation not proportion this to the economic climate? Because, I mean, if you look at the World Bank data that's out, it shows that economic growth on the whole continent, in fact, is now projected to be less. So isn't that maybe one of the reasons that you should be looking at and saying,
well, look, when we went to the 2008 Alliance Summit, we came out with a very clear concept to say, as we go forward, we can't allow our economy to be left at the hands of people who are driven by the profit motive. Because for the last 18 years before the global crisis of 2008, most of the businesses, the economy of this country was growing at around about 4 to 5%. Yeah. Where are those profits? Why is it that they were not reinvested? It's because most of those banks and companies have since taken them out of the country. There are trillions of rands that have left this country that are staying in tax havens all around the world. So what we are saying is that you are not going to say now that the economy is on a downturn, and then you say the workers have to understand and pay the price. We are not going to pay the price as the workers. What we are demanding is that first, government has to intervene. We want a developmental state that is going to intervene. How do they intervene? They have to force these companies to put a moratorium on retrenchment. Once you put that moratorium, let us call a summit between labor, business and government to have a discussion. We did this in 2009 when we were reacting to the global crisis of 2008. We can do it again because right now when we have an unemployment rate of 8 million, you can't add any other number on top of that.
Now, let's speak to the issue of national minimum wage. What does the Federation perceive as a minimum wage? And can you just mention a few of the sectors where it would be perceivable for a minimum wage?
Well, the issue of a minimum wage, when you look at, for example, the vulnerable sectors, for example, farm workers, you look at security, you look at retail, and you look at domestic workers, actually, because they are workers, and they are the most exploited domestic workers because people tend to not even give them proper leaves. For us, we are open to engagement on minimum wage to say it can be sectoral, because as much as we want it to be 8,000 across the board, it's very difficult to say you are going to say a domestic worker has to be paid 8,000 rand, or else you are denying those individuals. So let's have a discussion to say sectoral minimum wage, how do we then engage and get to that point where we agree? But in the bigger economic sectors, we expect the starting base and the starting salaries of most of the workers to lift up to 8,000. In the public service, we want actually the lowest paid in the public service to at least earn around about 15,000, because we believe that it is possible to do it. And unfortunately, this country, when you talk about giving people more money, we forget that that is where we get the tax. How are you going to increase your tax base if you don't pay people enough to be able to pay tax? So for us as an economy to be able to increase the tax base where we get the money for the fiscus, we need to start paying people decent salaries so that they can go back and contribute to the fiscus.
Sizwe, just in closing, I mean, you mentioned, for example, now that in 2009 you had discussions with government, for example, to try and halt retrenchments. When do we move beyond just discussions and talk shops and actually act? What is the action that should be taken today, tomorrow, going forward to ensure that the change does happen? That, you know, the wealth, you know, goes away from the 1%, the top 1%, and is redistributed, for example, that there is land reform? How do we move beyond just having discussions?
What we have done is, Cosatu, on a number of issues that we were raising today during the march, is that firstly, we have given all of the involved parties 14 days to respond to us. Remember, why this march was a legally protected strike is because we were discussing these issues at NETLEC and we deadlocked, and NETLEC was forced to give us a certificate to go on strike. So all of these sections, we do have timeframes and deadlines. If we do fail, we might see ourselves on a rolling mass action next year.
Sizwe, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a very informative discussion.
Thank you very much.